For years, the galaxy had known peace. A fragile peace held together by the alliances and treaties formed in the wake of past wars. The Galactic Council, a collection of the most powerful and influential species, had brokered this peace, and most races had learned to coexist. Earth, once a chaotic and war-torn planet, had become the unexpected center of this harmony. Its people, despite their violent past, had somehow earned a reputation as diplomats and peaceful thinkers. To the other races, humanity was a mystery. A species that had once been known for its wars and struggles now stood as the symbol of cooperation. But peace, as the galaxy had learned time and again, was always fragile. It all began when the Zarnathi Dominion, a powerful alien empire from the distant outer rim of the galaxy, shattered this calm. The Zarnathi were known for their aggressive expansion and their brutal tactics in battle. For years, they had eyed the resources of the neutral trading outposts near the galactic core, places that had long been under the protection of the Council. No one had dared to challenge the Council's authority until now. The Zarnathi attacked one of these outposts without warning, leaving it in ruins. Dozens of innocent lives were lost, and their ships were destroyed in the blink of an eye. The Council was shaken. They called for an emergency meeting, demanding answers, and for a strong response. The Zarnathi's message was clear. They were no longer going to play by the rules. They wanted power, and they intended to take it. The Council, for the first time in years, was divided. Some species wanted immediate retaliation, while others advocated for a more diplomatic solution. The debate raged for days, but in the end, it was Earth's voice that carried the most weight. The human representatives argued for caution, urging the Council to wait before taking action, to gather information, and to explore every possible diplomatic solution. The other species were uncertain, but they trusted the humans. Earth's ability to negotiate and make peace had never been questioned before. However, as the days passed and no response came from the Zarnathi, they grew bolder. They declared war on the entire galaxy, claiming that the Council had failed to protect the weak and that it was their right to conquer the galaxy by force. They were not only targeting the neutral outposts anymore, they were targeting everyone who opposed them. Fear spread like wildfire through the galaxy. Many species prepared for battle, but Earth remained silent. The human representatives said little. The Council could see the fear in their eyes, but the humans did not flinch. They simply listened and observed. On the surface, the galaxy was in chaos. Ships were mobilizing, defenses were being upgraded, and everyone was preparing for war. But behind closed doors, something strange was happening. The Council was growing increasingly uneasy with Earth's silence. Was humanity afraid? Were they unwilling to fight back? Many wondered if the humans were no longer as powerful as they once were. As the Zarnathi fleet continued its march through the galaxy, it seemed as though there would be no stopping them. But the humans had a different plan. Days later, a human warship appeared. It was not a fleet, but a single ship. A quiet, sleek vessel that moved through the stars with no fanfare. The Zarnathi laughed at the idea of a lone human ship standing against them. They had sent hundreds of ships to crush the neutral outposts, and now they had an entire fleet ready to wipe out Earth's colonies. But the human ship was not alone. Its crew had been silently preparing for this moment. The Zarnathi did not know what to expect. They had thought they had seen humanity's weakness, but they were wrong. The human ship appeared over a Zarnathi-controlled moon, and without warning, it unleashed a single pulse of energy. The Zarnathi fleet did not even have time to react. Their shields failed, their weapons cut out, and their entire defensive network collapsed. In a single strike, a significant portion of the Zarnathi fleet was destroyed. No one could understand how this had happened. The humans had not fired a single shot, they had simply taken out the power core of the entire moon. The Zarnathi were stunned. This was not the reaction they had expected from the humans. The Council, too, was left speechless. They had underestimated humanity's power, and now they saw it firsthand. But it was only the beginning. ASA, the Zarnathi scrambled to regroup. It was brief, cold, and calm. The message simply read, "We noticed." It was clear now that the humans had been watching everything unfold, preparing in silence while the galaxy had panicked. They had not been afraid. They had been waiting, calculating, and building their forces in the shadows. The human warship's attack on the Zarnathi moon had sent a shockwave through the galaxy. No one was sure where the human fleet had come from or how they had managed to pull off such a decisive strike. But the results were clear. The Zarnathi fleet, once so sure of their victory, was now shattered. Their strength was gone, and the galaxy began to realize that humanity was not just a species of diplomats. They were survivors, warriors, and when the peace was shattered, they did not flinch. The Zarnathi had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. The human warship continued its path through Zarnathi space, leaving nothing but destruction in its wake. Every Zarnathi fleet that crossed its path was obliterated, every stronghold dismantled, and every defense system neutralized. There was no victory for the Zarnathi, only defeat. The galaxy watched as humanity moved through the stars, not with the fury of war, but with the calm of inevitability. The Council, once divided, now stood united in respect for humanity's strength. They had seen it now. They had seen what humanity was capable of when pushed too far. No longer would the galaxy see Earth as a peaceful planet to be ignored. Humanity had shown them all what happened when they stopped flinching. In the aftermath, the Zarnathi Empire was no more. The rest of the galaxy returned to its fragile peace, but this time it was different. The respect for humanity was palpable, even among the species that had once feared them. The galaxy understood now, peace could never be taken for granted, and humanity, with its calm and patience, was the true guardian of that peace. And in the deepest corners of the galaxy, whispers of humanity's power spread, a reminder to every species that, when peace was shattered, humans would always be there not to fight first. But the Zarnathi Dominion had declared war, shattering the fragile peace that had long reigned across the galaxy. In the Galactic Council chambers, chaos erupted as representatives from dozens of species argued in frantic tones. A single declaration from the Zarnathi had shaken the balance of the universe. Earth, the once chaotic planet, now stood as the voice of reason in the council. The humans, usually so calm and patient, were silent. Their quiet demeanor was seen as an ominous sign. While the galaxy's other species scrambled to prepare for the coming war, the humans said nothing. No one knew what the silence meant, but it wasn't the silence of fear, it was the silence of something much more dangerous. On the surface, Earth's response seemed to be one of hesitation, a delay while the Council debated on how to best handle the Zarnathi threat. But behind closed doors, things were already moving. Ships were disappearing from known space lanes. Mining colonies, once bustling with activity, went dark. The world's defense network fell into a stillness that didn't feel right. What the rest of the galaxy didn't know was that Earth had been preparing for this moment for years. No one could see it, but humanity was already ready for war ready, in a way that none of the other species could have imagined. It was only when the Zarnathi fleet began advancing toward Earth's colonies that the galaxy began to take notice. The alien fleet was vast, a collection of massive warships designed for destruction. They moved with an almost arrogant speed, believing that humanity, a species so young, would never stand a chance. They had underestimated the humans. Earth had been quiet for so long that the Zarnathi thought their silence was weakness. But they couldn't have been more wrong. One by one, the human colonies vanished from Zarnathi sensors. Ships that had been expected to fight back against the alien invaders were gone. The Zarnathi commanders sent messages, demanding Earth's immediate surrender, threatening annihilation. But the humans never responded. No one had ever seen such a lack of reaction. They waited, and the Zarnathi grew more confident, believing their victory was assured. But what they didn't know was that Earth had one final move, something so quiet, so subtle, that no one could predict it. Days passed, and still, Earth made no move. But then, a single ship appeared in Zarnathi space. It was nothing like the massive fleets the aliens had prepared. It wasn't an armada of thousands. It was a single, sleek vessel that moved as though it didn't care about the odds stacked against it. This was humanity's message to the Zarnathi: we are not afraid. The humans didn't boast about their strength, didn't send grand declarations or threats. They simply showed up. The Zarnathi commanders were taken by surprise. They had expected Earth's fleet to appear in full force, to fight back with the power of an entire world behind them. Instead, they faced one lone ship, a ship that moved through their space with eerie precision. It was as though it knew exactly where to go, and no one could figure out how. The ship didn't announce its arrival with loud, blaring sirens or fire. It didn't need to. It appeared silently, cutting through Zarnathi space as if it belonged there. The galaxy watched in disbelief as the Zarnathi fleet scrambled to respond. The human ship didn't need to fire a single weapon. As it moved toward a Zarnathi stronghold, its presence alone caused the enemy to fall into chaos. Shields that had once seemed impenetrable began to fail. The Zarnathi commanders were panicking, ordering countermeasures, but nothing worked. The human ship's silence was unsettling. No warning shots, no messages. It was just there, moving like a predator in the night, and the Zarnathi were powerless to stop it. Then came the first strike. The Zarnathi stronghold, a massive station built to withstand the most brutal of attacks, vanished in a flash of white light. No one understood how. The human ship hadn't fired a shot. It had simply appeared near the station, and within moments the entire structure ceased to exist. The Zarnathi were stunned. Their greatest weapon had been destroyed with no visible damage, no impact crater, just gone. It was as though it had never existed at all. The galaxy was in shock. The Zarnathi were left speechless, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The humans hadn't fired a weapon. They hadn't launched a single missile or even activated a shield. But they had shown the Zarnathi one undeniable truth: humanity didn't need to announce its power. It was enough to simply be. The human ship continued its path through Zarnathi-controlled space, one move after another, as if it were following an invisible plan. The Zarnathi tried to counterattack, but each move they made only exposed their weakness. The human ship moved faster than they could react, appearing and disappearing with such precision that it seemed as though it was everywhere at once. No matter how many ships they sent, no matter how many weapons they fired, the human ship remained unstoppable. As the war escalated, the humans never flinched. Every strike was calculated, every move deliberate. There was no panic in their actions, no rush to win. They didn't need to. The Zarnathi had believed that humanity would be overwhelmed by their warships, but it was clear now that the real power lay not in the size of the fleet, but in the patience and intelligence of the humans. Their silence wasn't weakness, it was their greatest weapon. For the Zarnathi, it was a terrifying revelation. Every move they made was countered by the humans with chilling efficiency. The human ship didn't need to make threats. It didn't need to speak. It simply acted, and the Zarnathi found themselves retreating in the face of a foe they could not defeat. The galaxy watched, captivated, as the human ship moved through the stars, dismantling the Zarnathi war machine one piece at a time. The Zarnathi fleet, once so sure of victory, began to crumble. Their pride had blinded them to the reality that humanity had been preparing for this moment for a long time. The humans had not waited in fear. They had waited in silence, allowing the Zarnathi to make their first move and then striking back with quiet precision. The galaxy now understood the true nature of humanity's strength. In the end, it was not brute force that won the war. It was the humans' ability to remain silent when everyone else was shouting, to strike when it mattered, and to show the Zarnathi that their tactics of intimidation and destruction had no power over a species that understood how to wait, to listen, and to act only when the time was right. The Zarnathi surrendered, their once mighty fleets reduced to rubble. And as they bowed before the human representatives, the message was clear: humanity had not been afraid. They had simply waited for the right moment to strike. And when that moment came, they had been ready not with fire and noise, but with the quiet certainty that they would win. The galaxy would never forget the lesson, never mistake silence for weakness. The galaxy was a vast, endless expanse where countless species coexisted, but peace had always been fragile. The day the Zarnathi fleet entered human space was the day everything changed. The Zarnathi were a ruthless and powerful race, their ships towering over any human craft, and their warriors known for their brutal efficiency. For centuries, they had swept across galaxies, conquering, enslaving, and destroying anything in their path. Yet, they had always avoided Earth until now. It started with a single message. A cold, unfeeling transmission sent from a Zarnathi command ship to Earth's leadership. The message was simple: surrender now, or face complete destruction. There was no negotiation, no demand for dialogue. The Zarnathi believed that humans, a young and insignificant species, would quiver in fear at the mere mention of their name. But what they didn't know was that Earth had been preparing for this day for decades. The Zarnathi had underestimated humanity's will. The human response to the message was chillingly calm. Earth did not reply. They didn't need to. Behind the scenes, every military installation, every satellite, every weapon that had been quietly developed over the years was now in position. Earth wasn't just going to wait for the inevitable destruction. They were going to fight back. The humans knew one thing the Zarnathi didn't: to strike first was to strike with overwhelming force. As the Zarnathi fleet advanced toward Earth, the human fleets moved into position. What the Zarnathi didn't realize was that Earth had no intention of meeting them head-on in a traditional space battle. The humans had designed their forces to be unrecognizable to their enemies, smaller, faster ships that moved like shadows. But they weren't just moving, they were waiting. The perfect moment was yet to come. The first strike came not with the roar of blasters or the explosion of ships, but with silence. The Zarnathi fleet entered Earth's orbit, expecting to see a planet ready to burn. But what they saw instead was a well-calculated silence. No human ships appeared on their scanners. No incoming fire. For a brief moment, the Zarnathi fleet hesitated, as if uncertain. Then came the second surprise. The planet Earth was not defenseless. The humans had deployed a series of stealth satellites that had been built for one purpose: tracking Zarnathi movements with pinpoint accuracy. They had been hiding in plain sight, invisible to all but the most sophisticated systems, waiting for the Zarnathi to get close enough. In an instant, Earth's first strike was unleashed. A series of missiles, each one carrying a warhead of unknown power, shot into the vast emptiness of space. The Zarnathi fleet, still unaware of the full scope of humanity's preparation, scrambled to respond. But it was too late. The first missile hit its target with stunning precision, ripping through the shields of a massive Zarnathi dreadnought. The impact was sudden, and the blast sent shockwaves through the alien vessel. It was only the beginning. In less than an hour, another Zarnathi warship was reduced to a cloud of debris. The missiles kept coming, each strike hitting its mark with impossible accuracy. It wasn't just that the humans had developed new technology, they had studied the Zarnathi for years. Every weakness, every vulnerability had been meticulously catalogued. The humans had learned from every battle, every encounter with other alien races. They had learned how to strike when the enemy was most vulnerable. And now, they were showing the Zarnathi the true power of a species that had been underestimated for far too long. The Zarnathi, initially confident in their superiority, began to panic. They had not expected such an aggressive response. Their own ships tried to retaliate, firing their weapons into the dark void of space, hoping to hit something. But the humans were prepared. The human fleet moved like ghosts, appearing from one direction only to disappear into another, never staying long enough for the Zarnathi to catch up. It wasn't just warfare, it was a deadly dance. The Zarnathi found themselves engaged in a battle they couldn't understand, let alone win. But then, the Zarnathi commander, a battle-hardened veteran named Galactic, understood. He realized that humanity's strength wasn't in their numbers or their firepower. It was in their ingenuity, their ability to adapt, and their relentless determination. He ordered his fleet to regroup and adjust their strategy, but it was already too late. The human ships were everywhere, striking from unexpected angles, their weapons seemingly never running out of firepower. The Zarnathi had been trained to fight battles of overwhelming force, to crush enemies beneath a wave of superior firepower. But the humans didn't fight that way. They fought with precision, and it was that precision that would win the war. In the depths of space, the first full engagement occurred. The Zarnathi flagship, a vessel that had once been the terror of the galaxy, found itself surrounded. It was a terrifying sight. a ship that had destroyed entire worlds, now fighting for its survival. But the Zarnathi had never faced an enemy like this. The human fleet attacked relentlessly, their tactics focused on destroying the flagship's weapons and propulsion systems without hesitation. Each strike was carefully timed, designed to cripple the massive ship piece by piece. The Zarnathi commanders tried to mount a counteroffensive, but it was clear that they were losing. The flagship's shields flickered and failed, leaving it vulnerable. The human ships did not hesitate. They launched their final assault, a barrage of missiles that tore through the ship's hull. The flagship shuddered under the impact, its engines sputtering. The once mighty ship fell silent as its lights flickered and its weapons went dark. The Zarnathi were helpless to stop it. The human fleet pulled back, not to celebrate, but to prepare for the next phase. The Zarnathi were now reeling, their command ship destroyed and their fleet in disarray. But there was no sense of victory from the humans. They were focused, already planning the next strike. Earth wasn't finished yet. The first strike had been only the beginning. The Zarnathi had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity. As the Zarnathi regrouped, licking their wounds and reassessing their position, they were forced to come to terms with the truth they had awakened a sleeping giant. Humanity's first strike had shown them that no matter how big the enemy might be, no matter how powerful, there was always a way to fight back. The humans had given the galaxy a quiet warning. They were not a species to be ignored. And as the Zarnathi retreated, licking their wounds, it became clear that the war was far from over. The first strike had been decisive, but the humans were only getting started. In the end, the Zarnathi were forced to reconsider their approach. They had been so certain of their victory, but humanity's resilience and ingenuity had shattered that illusion. As the Zarnathi looked at their shattered fleet, they couldn't help but wonder if they had made the biggest mistake of all. And for humanity, that was just the beginning. The galaxy had seen countless civilizations rise and fall. Wars between species were common, each one believing they were the strongest. But among all the species, there was one that had always intrigued the others, the humans. Despite being young in the grand timeline of the galaxy, humanity had an uncanny ability to survive, adapt, and overcome challenges that seemed impossible. Their reputation had spread far and wide, and many races had come to view them as unpredictable, almost dangerous. No one knew the full truth about humans, not even the humans themselves. It started as a simple observation. The ancient species of the galaxy had always looked down on Earth and its inhabitants. The humans were too primitive, too volatile, and too chaotic. Their history was riddled with war, famine, and destruction. They didn't seem to fit the pattern of the typical galactic species, evolving, conquering, and eventually dominating the universe. And yet, somehow, the humans had managed to survive. More than survive, they had begun to thrive. They had built ships that could travel faster than light, and their technology had started to rival that of older, more established civilizations. But despite this, the humans were still considered an enigma. They were unpredictable, a puzzle that no one had yet solved. Then came the day when the galaxy's leaders decided it was time to learn the truth about humans. The Council of the Stars, a collective of the most powerful species, gathered to discuss the human anomaly. Their discussion was not one of diplomacy, but of concern. What was it about humans that made them so resilient? And could this resilience be a threat to the balance of the galaxy? The Council sent one of their most trusted agents, an ancient being named Exilor, to Earth. Xylar had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations, but humans were different. They didn't have the elegance of the Quarians or the sheer power of the Vornax. What they had was something else entirely: a drive, a will to survive that seemed unbreakable. Xylar's mission was clear: find out why. When Xylar arrived on Earth, he expected to find a society in turmoil, struggling to keep up with the galaxy's more advanced species. What he found was a world in the midst of a quiet revolution. Humans had begun to build a network of technologies that no one had anticipated. They had started to communicate with other species, forging alliances and learning from them. Their ships had begun to match the speed and power of those from older civilizations. But it wasn't just the technology that intrigued Exilor, it was the people themselves. There was something in the way humans carried themselves, in their eyes that struck him as unusual. He saw humans who fought with passion, but also with compassion. He saw them struggle with their flaws, yet always rise above them. He watched as they faced impossible odds, yet always found a way to persevere. There was a fire in their hearts, something raw and untamed. Xyler began to realize that it wasn't their technology or their strategies that made them so formidable. It was their spirit. One night, as Xyler sat alone in a human city, watching the stars above, he encountered a human who seemed to embody everything that made their species so intriguing. The man, an old war veteran named Samuel, had seen the worst of humanity. He had fought in wars, lost comrades, and survived battles that would have broken any other race. Yet, when he spoke, it wasn't of hatred or fear. It was of hope, of the belief that even in the darkest moments, humanity could rise. Xyler asked him how he could remain so calm, so hopeful, despite all the destruction he had witnessed. Samuel's answer was simple. Humans don't quit. No matter how many times we fall, we get back up. It's in our nature. It's what makes us who we are. Those words stayed with Xyler long after their conversation ended. He realized that the truth about humans wasn't just about survival or technology, it was about resilience. Humans could endure because they refused to be defeated, no matter the odds. They had a strength that came from within, something that couldn't be measured by weapons or ships. It was a force of will, a drive to keep going even when the universe seemed set against them. But Xyler's mission wasn't over. He had to report back to the Council, and there was still much more to learn. He traveled to the farthest reaches of the galaxy, observing how humans interacted with other species. What he saw both shocked and impressed him. Humans had an uncanny ability to form alliances, to bridge gaps between species that had been enemies for millennia. They didn't just fight to win, they fought to make a difference. They fought for the future, for something greater than themselves. Xyler watched as humans led peace talks between two warring species, using nothing more than words and their innate understanding of the fragility of life. In the end, the peace was brokered not through strength, but through empathy. Humans didn't see the galaxy as a series of challenges to be overcome. They saw it as a place to connect, to grow, and to survive together. When Xyler returned to the Council of the Stars, he didn't speak of human technology or military power. He spoke of their spirit. He spoke of the truth that he had learned. Humans had an unbreakable will to survive, not because they were the most advanced or the most powerful, but because they refused to be broken, no matter what the galaxy threw at them. They had something that no other species possessed, a resilience that came from their hearts, a force that was more dangerous than any weapon. The Council listened in silence as Xyler recounted his findings. There was no argument, no dissent. The truth was undeniable. The humans were a species unlike any other. And as the meeting came to a close, the leaders of the galaxy realized that the future of the universe might very well depend on the humans. From that day forward, the Council of the Stars no longer viewed humans as a mere curiosity. They saw them for what they truly were, a force to be reckoned with. A species whose spirit could not be crushed, whose determination could not be swayed. And while the humans didn't know it yet, they were destined to play a pivotal role in the future of the galaxy. In the end, Xyler returned to Earth, his mission complete. He never shared the full truth of what he had learned with the humans themselves. He didn't need to. The truth was clear. The strength of humanity didn't lie in their weapons or their technology. It lay in their hearts, their souls, in their unwavering belief that no matter the challenge, they would rise again. And that, Xyler realized, was what made humans truly unstoppable. The galaxy was at peace, or so it seemed. For centuries, different species had coexisted, their borders defined, their territories respected. The Council of the Stars governed the major powers, ensuring stability among the different civilizations. There had been conflict in the past, but those times seemed distant, memories fading as new generations emerged. However, a shadow was creeping across the galaxy, one that no one had seen coming. It wasn't a new weapon, nor an ancient enemy awakening. It was something entirely different. It was humanity. At first, the humans were just another young species among countless others. Their technology was primitive, their history marked with endless wars and struggles. But what they lacked in advanced weaponry or ancient wisdom, they made up for with something far more dangerous: an unyielding will. The humans' resilience, their refusal to be defeated, had begun to draw the attention of the galaxy's most powerful leaders. They watched, studied, and waited until they could no longer ignore the truth. In the distant reaches of the galaxy, a species known as the Krathians had long been known for their strength and ruthlessness. They had conquered entire star systems and instilled fear in every race they encountered. The Krathians believed in one thing: survival of the strongest. They respected power, and they commanded it. When they first encountered humans, they assumed they were just another primitive race to be conquered. After all, humans had only just begun exploring the stars, and their military was laughably small compared to the Krathian war machines. But what the Krathians didn't account for was the tenacity of humanity. The first encounter between humans and the Krathians took place in the Outer Rim, in a system that had been a quiet border between their territories. A human ship, the Valiant, was on a diplomatic mission, bringing peace talks between two rival species. But the Krathians saw this as an opportunity to show their dominance, to remind the galaxy that they were the ultimate authority. They attacked without warning, sending waves of their warships to destroy the human vessel. It was an act of pure aggression, a statement of power. The Krathians didn't expect the humans to fight back. But the humans didn't just surrender. They fought fiercely, using every trick, every advantage they could muster. They didn't have the superior firepower or technology of the Krathians, but they had something far more dangerous: resourcefulness. The humans had learned how to fight not just with their weapons, but with their minds. They used the environment to their advantage, leading the Krathians into traps, outwitting them at every turn. The battle raged for days, with the Krathians growing increasingly frustrated as the humans managed to stay one step ahead. In the end, the Krathians were forced to retreat. The Valiant had been badly damaged, but it had survived, and the humans had proven something no one had expected: they were not to be underestimated. The news of the Krathian defeat spread quickly throughout the galaxy, and a quiet tension began to build. The Krathians, once the dominant force in the galaxy, now had a rival. A new power had emerged. The question that everyone whispered in hushed tones was, what would humanity do next? Meanwhile, on Earth, the leaders of the human race convened to discuss the ramifications of their unexpected victory. They knew the galaxy was watching them now, and they understood that they had become a symbol of something far more important than military might. They had earned the respect of the Krathians, but they had also earned something more: the fear of the galaxy's most powerful species. And that fear, as dangerous as it was, would be the key to their survival. Over the coming months, the humans began to make their presence known across the galaxy. They didn't demand anything, they didn't seek conquest, but wherever they went, they left an impression. They offered alliances, trade agreements, and shared technology. But always with a quiet warning in the back of their dealings: don't mistake our kindness for weakness. The message was clear. Humans had fought and won against a species that no one had dared challenge for centuries. And while they were not looking for conflict, they were more than capable of defending themselves. As the humans made their mark, other species began to take notice. The Vornax, a race known for their aggressive expansion, had long held control over a large portion of the galaxy. They had once been the most feared species in the galaxy, until the humans proved they were not afraid to stand up to them. The Vornax, like the Krathians, underestimated humanity. They saw the humans as naive, untested in true combat, but soon they realized their mistake. The humans fought not for glory, but for survival. The Vornax learned that the hard way when they tried to expand into human space. In a decisive battle, the Vornax were decisively defeated, their fleet crippled by a combination of human ingenuity and sheer determination. The Vornax had no choice but to retreat, and for the first time in their history, they had been forced to acknowledge that another species was more than a match for them. Humanity had earned something that even the most powerful species in the galaxy couldn't take from them: respect. But with that respect came something else: fear. The galaxy had always prided itself on its power, and humanity had shattered that illusion. No longer could the other species hide behind the safety of their power. They had to face the uncomfortable truth that humans could no longer be ignored. And with that truth came an unspoken question: what would the humans do next? The Council of the Stars, a collective of the most influential species in the galaxy, convened to discuss the rise of humanity. The Krathians, the Vornax, and the other major powers were divided. Some sought to form alliances with humanity, hoping to secure their future in the changing galaxy. Others, however, saw humanity's rise as a threat and began to plot ways to contain them. There was a growing fear among the galactic leaders, an understanding that humans were not just another race, they were a force that could alter the course of the galaxy forever. The truth about humans had become clear. They were not the most powerful or the most advanced species. They didn't have the most advanced technology or the largest fleets. But they had something more dangerous than any weapon, a spirit that would never break. The galaxy had learned to respect humanity, but it had also learned to fear them. And as the humans continued to grow in influence, that fear would only deepen. The question was no longer if humanity would rise to power, it was when. And the galaxy would be forced to reckon with the truth. The future belonged to the humans, whether they were ready or not.